Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for joining us today. Well, I've got another pistol video for you here today, and this one is born from a conversation from both people at the range and from some of our viewers that are fans of the FN-57 cartridge and the FN-57 pistol, and they wanted to get the take on the RUGER-57, which is their version of the 5.7 pistol. Now, my first reaction was, well, this isn't exactly a carry gun as far as I'm concerned. It's a little big, but I was challenged about this from an individual that said he carries the RUGER-57 every day, and in the right holster, it is a perfectly viable option. Now, of course, we're all about exploring that, so we're going to take a look at the RUGER-57 today and find out whether it is something that you want to add to your arsenal and whether it is a choice, whether practical or not, for concealed carry. And we're going to get into all of that in just a minute. Okay, once again, welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us. If you are joining us for the first time, or if you've been watching our videos and you just haven't had a chance to do so, you could help us out by subscribing. We would appreciate it. And if you want to do that, you can find that button in the lower right-hand portion of your computer screen there. You can hit the subscribe button. Or if you're on a mobile device, simply scroll down below the video, and you can hit subscribe there and hit the bell icon. It'll let you know whenever we do something new. And that helps us out more than you know, and we can't thank you enough. So, today we're talking about the RUGER-57. This is an interesting pistol, and like I said, I had some challenges to individuals that wanted me to talk about this pistol because when I see something like this, I automatically think, well, this is a bit much for carry. Now, we're going to look at all that, so I'm not saying that it's not yet, but I was reluctant to even talk about this. Although, I do have a lot of interest in the firearm itself. I've been curious about the cartridge and, you know, what's good about it and whether this would be something I want to own anyway. And of course, we want to thank our friends over at Don's Weaponry for providing us this beautiful example of this RUGER-57 for use in our tabletop today. Don's Weaponry is a huge supporter of firearm safety and education, and we can't thank them enough for their support. So, the cartridge that this fires, the 5.7 by 28 millimeter, there are probably many people who are already familiar with the pistol that came before this, of course, and that is the FN-57. Now, there are some differences between the FN-57 and the RUGER-57, obviously, and rather than try and spend this whole video comparing that, I don't think that's going to be as productive. I'll point out a couple of things that are different just because they may make a difference in what you see here. But getting right down to it, we always like to start off doing a little size comparison. Now, on this one, this is going to be, this will be interesting. So, let me lay this thing down. And we always like to start off with something familiar. And of course, I'm going to use our overused Glock 19 here just because it's a good standard to use for size. And as you can see, the RUGER-57 is much bigger than the Glock 19 as far as length goes. Now, there's going to be some other areas here that might surprise you, but just looking at the barrel length, you know, this is not a small pistol, okay? We're talking about an overall length on the RUGER-57 of 8.65 inches. It's got a 4.94 inch barrel, so this is a pretty long firearm. But if you look at a couple of things here, if you look at the grip, you'll see that it's really not that thick, not like you would think. You know, it's a little bit longer, obviously, than your Glock 19, but there is a good reason for that. We're going to get into that here in a second. But if you look at the thickness of the grip, as you can see, we're very, very similar to our Glock. And it's actually kind of surprising when you see what's going on in here as far as the size of the magazine. And let me just show you that real quick. You know, this is a pretty pretty hefty magazine. You know, by comparison, obviously your Glock 19's a 9mm, but the FN 5.7 by 28mm cartridge is a lot, you know, longer than a 9mm round, and so you have a very big, thick, fat cartridge. Now this is, I'm going to get more into this in the features, so I don't want to talk too much about this right now, but they've done a pretty good job of minimizing the amount of grip that's around that magazine, so you have a pretty narrow grip, all things considered. Now the only thing I have in the way of, say, Glock that'll even come close to this, just to give you another pistol that's in the same kind of size category, I do have a Glock 35 here. As you can see, this is a long slide Glock 35. This is actually a 40 caliber weapon, but I just mainly want you to see how big it is, because if any of you have got the long slide Glocks, you know how big that gun is, and so you can see how large that RUGER-57 is by comparison. It's a lot of gun, but just wanted you to see that, because obviously we always want to start off by kind of giving you an idea of what this gun looks like compared to some other common firearms, because if you're going to carry this thing on the body, this is going to matter. And of course we're going to cover that specifically under carry, but that's always where we want to get started. We're going to go ahead and cover the features now. And you know, I was talking to you a moment ago, we were talking about the grip and the magazine and how that affects the size. So once again, like I said, this is a 5.7 by 28mm cartridge. The magazine is pretty big. Now on the FN, their gun, on the actual FN 5.7, they have polymer mags, and they are a little bit thicker. And the steel magazines that are featured in the Ruger actually help to get this grip size smaller. And you know, that's a plus, because you know, this is not a small firearm, so getting even part of the firearm down a little bit smaller is good, and the grip actually feels pretty good in the hand, which we'll discuss a little bit more. But since we're talking about the magazine, this is a 20 round magazine. Like I said, the FN 5.7 by 28mm cartridge, it's you know, longer and narrower than, you know, your 9mm cartridge, and so you can get a whole lot more of them in this magazine. Now once again, the mag's pretty good size, but they also make this in a 10 round magazine for those states that require that for compliance. But once you have the magazine in place, when you feel the grip, you can see that you don't have that much more grip thickness than you do the magazines. They've done a really good job of engineering that around that steel magazine to where this gun doesn't feel as enormous as it actually is. But once again, going through the features in kind of no particular order, right away, of course, you see that on this long slide here, we have our front and our rear serrations. Of course, you got the RUGER-57 etched into it there. Looking at your top here, so you can see a few things. You can see there's cutout, and they've shaved out, you know, portions of the slide here, and they've got your cutout in the slide here, weight reducing. And you've got your fiber optic sight on the front. You have an adjustable rear sight, which will come in handy, because based on what type of ammunition that you use in your RUGER-57, you might need to make some point of impact adjustments. This firearm also has capability of having optics attached to it, and you have mounting points in here for the plates and such. You do have your takedown lever here. It's a pretty simple operation, like a lot of the other semi-autos with the same type. You have your slide, stop, and release. Let's take our magazine out again. You can take a look. We'll just verify that we are clear. You can see all the way through the firearm there, and you can see the feed ramp in the barrel. Everything is good to go there. We're going to kind of work our way around. You can see there's a little shroud here around the slide stop, which keeps you from getting into it when you don't really want to. You've got a pretty long accessory rail here. So once again, if you're the type of individual that likes lights and lasers on your firearm, because like I say, just at first glance, this is a larger gun to me that you might want more as a nightstand gun, or something of that nature, which is more where I would be putting lights and lasers on my gun, is something that I'm not carrying on me, but something I would grab if I needed to. The grip texturing is pretty light. I like the placement of it. You've got some pretty fine texturing all the way around. On the back too, it feels really good, but it's not real harsh, but you don't really need it to be. I'll talk about more of that when we talk about the range, but you don't really need a harsh because it's not that hard to hang on to. You've got a little bit of cutouts here on the front of the trigger guard. It has looks like a 1911 style ambidextrous safety, and it's pretty low profile. I've said many times reviewing firearms that I'm not a real big fan of manual safeties on my gun, but as long as it doesn't get in my way, like this is really good. It's very thin and it doesn't get in my way at all when I'm operating the firearm. So if I have a safety that I don't really have to pay attention to, I don't really mind it being there. So for me, this isn't a deal breaker at all that it's got a manual safety, because I don't care. It's doing its thing, and if I want it, I've got it, but it's not in my way at all. The mechanism, Ruger, this pistol that they've made, recently we featured the Security-9. We talked about it, and we talked about its internal workings. And the RUGER-57 shares some features with the Security-9. The internal workings, the trigger, you've got this bar that has to be depressed before the trigger will engage, and the internal mechanisms are the same as far as safety, the trigger bar, things like that keep the gun from firing unless everything is like it should be, of course. And of course, like the Security-9, it is an internal hammer. It is not a striker-fired gun. And that's the same thing for the original FN-57. It is also an internal hammer. And when you have if you look inside, if you look closely, you can actually see the components move. But it is interesting once you get on the inside. I don't know why there was confusion about this, because some people actually thought this was a striker-fired pistol, but actually you can actually see it. You can actually see the hammer and the pin on the inside. So you've got your magazine release here, and this is one of those pistols that's made in such a way when you hit the magazine release, you get a good solid ejection, and you can pull it out. These magazines do fit a little snug. They come out pretty easy, but they do fit a little snugly into the firearm to me. Not a big deal. Also, the way this has been designed, if you notice, there's a little indentation right here at the bottom of the grip, and it's hard to see the depth as well. I'll kind of turn it. You can see it that way. You can see that little drop. Well, let's say that the magazine doesn't drop free the way you want it to. That's a perfect gripping point to strip that magazine out of the weapon. So, looking the weapon over, the ergonomics are really good. From this point on the grip, the trigger is pretty easy to get to. You've got a hardened billet steel slide with the lightning cuts in it. Like I say, it does have the ability, it's tapped for the mounting of optics. Of course, the sight, like we said, it is windage and elevation adjustable. The barrel is has a black nitride treatment to make it wear better. You do have steel magazines. Like I said, it's got a pretty good grip. It's got a pretty impressive rail on it. It's easy to take down, and once again, it's got that 1911 style safety on it, which I don't really use, but if you do use it, it's very simple to operate, and if you don't like safeties, it's not going to be in your way. So pretty pretty basic, easy feature set there. You get a lot. That front sight, once again, I just want to go back to that. It's a real high visibility sight. I'm a real fan of these fiber optic sights anyway, because I think they show up so well, during the daytime. And I do think night sights are good in a lot of cases. But if you're going to have a pistol that doesn't have that, I think fiber optic is probably the next best thing. We're going to go ahead and talk about the range. So this was my first experience with the 5.7 by 28 millimeter cartridge, and luckily we were actually able to get some ammo for this, because if you've been trying to find ammo yourself, you know that it has been challenging at times, and there are certain rounds that are even harder to get than others, and for whatever reason the 5.7 round has been very tough to get, so we're grateful we were able to get some to test the firearm with. But one of the first things that I noticed after we took this firearm to the range was that, I mentioned earlier that it seemed like the texturing was, very light, like it's almost cosmetic, because there's not a whole lot to it. I like the way it looks, but I thought, that's not a very aggressive grip. But when you shoot the firearm, you'll find out why, because there's virtually no recoil in the firearm. Now, they make different, types of rounds. There's a variety of different FN57 rounds that you can get for the gun, but just using the standard ball ammo and using some of the FN blue tip ammo, the weapon does not have hardly any recoil. You're back on target very quickly. So when you shoot, it's weird, because when you look at the gun, size of the gun, you kind of automatically think, well, it's going to be a lot more to handle. It's going to be a lot more responsive than it is. And when you shoot it and you get that small amount of recoil, and you're right back on target, it's pretty impressive. Now, the trigger pull on this, we tested several times using a scale, and it was a little under 4 pounds, like 3.8, 3.9 pounds, pretty consistently is what we got. And just kind of looking at the firearm, playing around with it here, the trigger, the reset on this, it's a little bit longer. If you look, this is the total. See, we're almost all the way back out when you come out here. But because that trigger pull is as light as it is, you don't really notice how far you're coming back out on the reset. The gun shoots really well, and the total travel of this trigger is not that far anyway, so you don't really notice much of that when you're shooting it. Accuracy, the weapon is extremely accurate. Now, the thing about this cartridge, obviously a lot of people are already familiar with, say, the 9mm cartridge. It's very popular. There's a ton of handguns that use that cartridge, and it's probably the most popular cartridge for any concealed carry weapon. Well, typically you've got all these different kinds of ammo available for the 9mm. It could be 1,200 feet per second. It could be 14, it could be 15, depends on the type. But the RUGER-57 can actually produce muzzle velocities of at least 1,700 feet per second, even higher with certain other types of ammo. So it's a higher velocity round, and we're going to just say overall, because I don't want to get into a bunch of technical nitpicking about which round is at which speed and all that. But the FN57 round is a higher velocity round than, say, a 9mm round. And it will, like I say, it's a lighter cartridge. You've got a long slide, so you don't get a lot of recoil, but it's extremely accurate. and you can come back with follow-up shots that are extremely accurate. And I test this gun the same way I test any gun that's going to be for concealed carry, which is around 21 feet. And you can punch a quarter-size hole all day long and just have a raggedy open hole that you're just shooting more rounds through and not even hitting paper anymore very easily with this gun. And people who haven't even done a lot of shooting were waiting in line to take their shot with this, and they could do the same thing without a whole lot of effort. So it's a very accurate gun. So even if you didn't decide to go with something like this for carry, which, you know, as big as it is, that might be your decision, it's still a really good pistol as far as accuracy. So it might be a good choice for someone if they want something for home defense that's a little bit, a little bit different and very accurate. And of course, it's made really well. There are those, like I said, I don't have both pistols, and I want to get a hold of the actual 5.7 in the near future so I can shoot it and do a comparison video. But I have some colleagues that have got both, and they have made a statement that they feel like that the RUGER-57 is actually a little bit better weapon than the FN 5.7. Mainly just as far as they feel like it's more refined and some of the features, things like that. But as far as overall range performance, it did very well. It's very easy to shoot, and as far as reliability, we didn't have a ton of ammo to shoot through the weapon, but what we did shoot through the weapon, we didn't experience any failures. So that's a good thing. So what's it like to carry the RUGER-57? Is it even possible? Well, okay, so I started off a bit skeptical whether it's even possible to carry this gun, and I'm not saying I've changed my mind, but I didn't have a holster readily available for me to even test this with. But luckily, one of my range partners actually had just purchased Alien Gear has got the Cloak Tuck holster, which is, you know, their Kydex holster, and actually the new one, the one I got to use was the Cloak Tuck 3.5, and it's got like neoprene against the body, and it's got a little stiffening steel plate on the inside, and it's Kydex. And it actually, I was surprised that I was able to actually put this gun in a holster and put it on me. It had very much the same feel as like the crossbreeds that I wear that are Kydex and leather, except the neoprene was extra comfy on the body. Now, having said that, I had the most comfortable holster I think I could possibly have to try this experiment with. But even doing that, there's absolutely no mistaking that you have a firearm on you that's almost, 9 inches long. Okay, this is a big gun. Even with a good holster, this is not one of those situations where I found myself going around saying, hey, you know what, I don't even feel like I'm carrying a gun today. No, you definitely know when you're carrying this gun. I don't care what kind of holster it's in. But the 5.7 in the Cloak Tuck 3.5 was actually not as bad as I thought. But it definitely was more difficult for me to carry than, say, a Glock 19, just because it goes so much further, between the, your waistline and the body. There was no good way for me to position this firearm for it to really be comfortable for any length of time. It's okay standing up, talking to the people at the range, or if you're at the gun shop or something and you've got it holstered and it's in a covered shirt. That's great if you're standing up, but when you sit down, forget about it. And in the car, yeah, it just was not comfortable at all for me to carry in the car. Now, having said all that, I was pretty sure in the beginning, before I even tried this firearm, that it wasn't going to be an ideal carry gun. And of course, that is our focus here on this channel. It's the concealed carry channel. But just because our main focus is concealed carry guns doesn't mean we can't find a viable use for a gun that's not a good concealed carry gun. And once again, this is just my opinion. I had two different people at the range and at the gun shop tell me I was crazy that they carry this gun all day long, and they're perfectly fine with it. But both the people who were making that claim, they also stand all day long. they work in areas where they've got the firearm in the holster and they stand. It's not like they have to sit with it. But either way, they challenged me that this could be carried on a regular basis. But for me, I'm going to say no. It's just too big of a gun. However, I will say this. As good as this gun shoots, and it shoots very well, and with all the accessories available for it, I mean, you can take a gun like this, get the optics plate, have a good red dot on it, put a light, whatever you want to do, and this would be a fantastic gun for either target practice or for home defense, whatever you want to do, because it is a very reliable gun. The 57 cartridge is very capable. Now, like I say, it's going to be different. It's so much of an apples and oranges thing, talking about the FN57 cartridge versus, say, a 9mm cartridge. But from everything that I've looked at and all the information I've been able to gather, and of course my own experience with the way the cartridge shooting at other things like shooting through wood or through paper plates or through ballistic gel, everything I've seen, the 5.7 cartridge is capable. And once again, we're not really having a discussion about caliber, but there's no reason you couldn't use this as a defensive weapon if you wanted to, even if it was just like a nightstand gun. So anyway, not necessarily my choice for concealed carry, but a great weapon either way. So overall impressions of the RUGER-57. Well, I always try to be as honest and forthcoming as I can with these things. And as far as the concealed carry weapon goes, no, not for me. It's cool. There is definitely a cool factor to the RUGER-57. The FN57 cartridge is something that I've been curious about for a while, and so I was pretty happy to get my hands on this and be able to shoot it and play with it. It's a great little gun. And like I said, having said that, it's a perfectly viable option as far as a defensive gun. Extremely reliable. Ruger makes great firearms. And like I say, it shares a lot of similarities mechanically with the Security 9, which is also a great weapon. With the ability to add lights and lasers if you want, you can add optics to it. The grip, I mean, you're talking about a firearm that's 20+1 capacity, and but they've managed to make it very comfortable and still have good trigger reach, have a nice trigger guard. So you can use gloves on if you want to. The controls are very simple and easy to articulate. The firearm is very well made, it seems like. And of course, so far it's proven to be extremely reliable. So there's nothing wrong with this pistol. Great performer. And it does have, that factor because it's kind of a unique offering. But to me, even in the best possible holster I could get, it just wasn't comfortable. And you'll hear me talk about the main things that you need to think about. There's other things, but it always comes down to me, it's accuracy, reliability, and comfort. And comfort is so important because if it's not comfortable to carry, well, you're not going to carry it. So, bottom line is, this thing is just too big and too heavy, in my opinion, to be a regular carry gun. Now, if you open carry, or if you have different situation where you stand all day long, and so you're not going to be doing a lot of sitting down, or you're not going to be in the vehicle with it, that might be a different story. But if you're actually going to carry the gun and it's going to be an all day long, stay with you while you do your normal stuff, a truly concealed firearm, it's just too much gun for me. And I'm not a small guy, I've got big hands and limbs, and I can usually carry a pretty good sized firearm on me, and this is a bit much for me. So anyway, great firearm, not so much for carry. Okay, well, that's going to do it. And once again, we sure appreciate you being with us today. So we're going to be back soon with another video for you. And until that time, as always, we just wish everybody the best. Be careful out there. We can't thank you enough for your support. We'll be back soon. Thanks a lot.